Michael Thompson sat in his opulent office, the sun streaming through the expansive windows that overlooked the bustling city below. The office was a testament to his success, adorned with polished mahogany furniture and walls lined with accolades and framed magazine covers that celebrated his numerous achievements as a wealthy entrepreneur. Yet despite the accolades and the wealth that surrounded him, Mikhail felt an unsettling emptiness gnawing at his insides. He leaned back in his leather chair, fingers steepled, and stared blankly at the wall. The recent business deal that had made headlines, a merger that had skyrocketed his company's value, should have been a cause for celebration, but instead it felt hollow. Another day, another dollar, he muttered to himself, the words tasting bitter on his tongue. He recalled the late nights spent poring over spreadsheets, the relentless meetings with investors, and the sacrifices he had made along the way. Friends had faded into the background, their voices reduced to echoes of laughter that once filled his life. He had climbed the corporate ladder with relentless determination, but at what cost? "Mr. Thompson?" The voice of his assistant, Lisa, broke through his reverie. She was a young woman in her late 20s, always impeccably dressed, with a knack for keeping his chaotic schedule in check. "You have a meeting with the board in 15 minutes. "Right," he replied, shaking off the fog of introspection. "Thanks, Lisa." As she exited, he took a deep breath, forcing himself to focus on the tasks ahead. He had built this empire, but the weight of his past failures lingered like a shadow, haunting him even amidst the fruits of his labor. Later that afternoon, after a series of dull meetings, Michael found himself restless. The walls of the office felt like they were closing in on him, and he yearned for a breath of fresh air. He decided to escape the confines of the city and retreated to his weekend cabin in the mountains. The retreat had been a sanctuary for him, a place to unwind from the relentless pressures of his life. He packed a small bag filled with the essentials and set off, leaving behind the sterile environment of his office for the serenity of nature. As he drove along the winding mountain roads, surrounded by towering trees and the scent of pine, Michael felt a sense of relief wash over him. The vibrant greens of the forest seemed to breathe life back into him, and he welcomed the sense of freedom that came with being away from the relentless demands of his work. Upon arriving at the cabin, he changed into comfortable clothes and decided to take a walk in the forest. The tranquility of the woods enveloped him as he ventured deeper, the sounds of chirping birds and rustling leaves soothing his troubled mind. He could feel the weight of his worries lifting, even if just for a moment. As he walked, he reflected on his childhood, the dreams he had once held, and the friends he had lost along the way. Memories flooded back, of laughter shared around campfires, of adventures in the woods that now felt so distant. He had been so full of hope back then, so unaware of the harsh realities that adulthood would bring. "Why did I let them slip away?" he whispered to himself, his voice barely above a murmur. He remembered the faces of those friends, their smiles bright and carefree, and how life had pulled them in different directions. The thought of his own failures stung. He had excelled professionally, but his personal life felt like a series of broken connections, like threads unraveled. Lost in thought, Michael wandered farther into the forest, until the familiar sounds of nature were suddenly interrupted by something else, a faint, distressed cry. He paused, his heart racing, the peaceful ambiance replaced by an urgent curiosity. The cry was soft, almost like a whisper, but it pierced through the silence of the woods. "Hello?" he called out, his voice echoing through the trees. He strained his ears, trying to discern the direction of the sound. The cries grew louder, tinged with fear. "Help, please!" The plea was unmistakably that of a child. Without a second thought, Michael followed the sound, pushing through the underbrush and weaving between the trees. His instincts kicked in. He had to find the source. After a few moments of navigating the thicket, he stumbled upon a small clearing where a girl sat on a fallen log, her tiny frame trembling. "Hey there," he said gently, kneeling down to her level. She was about 7 years old, with wide, tear-filled eyes and tangled hair. Her dress was dusty, and her hands were smudged with dirt. "What's wrong? Are you lost?" She looked up at him, her eyes glistening with fear and confusion. I can't find my mom, she stammered, her voice shaking. I was playing and then I got lost. Michael's heart sank. It's okay. My name is Michael. Can you tell me your name? Lily, she replied, her voice barely a whisper. All right, Lily, we're going to find your mom together. Can you show me where you last saw her? He extended his hand, hoping to offer her some comfort and reassurance. For a moment she hesitated, her small hands curling into fists as she looked at him with uncertainty. But then, after what felt like an eternity, she reached out and grasped his hand, her grip surprisingly strong for someone so young. Okay, she said, her voice steadier now. I was playing by the big tree, and then I heard a noise, and I ran away. Let's go back there together, Michael said, feeling a sense of determination swell within him. As they walked, he couldn't help but notice how fragile she seemed, yet there was an undeniable spark of resilience in her eyes. Do you think my mom is looking for me? Lily asked, her voice tinged with worry. Of course she is, Michael reassured her. Moms always look for their kids, just like I'll look for you until we find her. As they moved deeper into the woods, Michael felt an odd sense of clarity wash over him. This lost girl, with her innocence and vulnerability, reminded him of everything he had once cherished. As they walked hand in hand, he realized that perhaps, in helping Lily find her mother, he might also find something he had lost long ago: hope, connection, and a sense of purpose. The forest surrounded them, a world of shadows and light, a place that held secrets waiting to be uncovered. Little did they know, their lives were about to become intertwined in ways neither could have predicted. Michael knelt next to Lily, his heart aching at the sight of her tear-streaked face and trembling shoulders. The forest loomed around them, an endless sea of green shadows that seemed to press in closer with each passing moment. He took a deep breath, steadying himself before speaking. Hey, it's okay, Lily. We're going to find your mom. I promise. Lily looked up at him with wide, frightened eyes, her small hands twisting in the fabric of her shirt. But I don't know where she is. I was playing, and then I couldn't find her. Her voice wavered, a fragile note of panic that tugged at Michael's heart. He reached out, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. Let's think about this, he said, his tone soothing. You were camping with your mom, right? Do you remember where you last saw her? Lily nodded slowly, her brow furrowing as she concentrated. We were by a big tree. It had a hole in it. I wanted to see if there were bugs inside. Michael smiled softly, trying to coax a sense of calm into the situation. A big tree with a hole, huh? That sounds like something I would have done when I was your age. He chuckled lightly, hoping to break through her fear. Did you find any bugs? Lily hesitated, her gaze drifting away, as if she were trying to conjure the memory. I don't remember. I just wanted to play. Playing is important, he replied, his voice low and earnest. But now we need to focus on finding your mom. Can you tell me more about her? What does she look like? Lily thought for a moment before her face brightened. She has long hair, like sunshine, and she always wears that blue jacket with the flowers on it. Michael nodded, picturing the woman Lily described. Okay, let's keep that in mind. We'll look for anyone who matches that description. He stood up and extended a hand to her. Can you stand? With a small nod, Lily took his hand, her little fingers wrapping around his with a surprising strength. As they began to walk deeper into the woods, Michael felt a strange sense of purpose filling the void that had haunted him for years. Here he was, lost in the forest, yet he felt more grounded than he had in a long time. As they walked, Michael decided to share a bit about himself to distract her from the anxiety coursing through both of them. You know, when I was a kid, I used to get lost a lot too. Really? Lily looked up at him, surprise evident in her wide eyes. Yep. I was always wandering off, exploring new places. Once I got lost for hours in a big park. I was so scared, but eventually I found my way back. He paused, remembering that day vividly. And when I did, my mom was waiting for me, worried sick. What happened? Lily asked, her curiosity piqued. She hugged me so tight I thought I might burst. She was so happy to see me. Lily giggled softly, imagining the scene. Did you get in trouble? Michael chuckled, shaking his head. Not really. She was just relieved I was safe. But I learned to stick close after that. "What's stick close?" she asked, her brow wrinkling in confusion. "It means to stay near someone you trust," Michael explained. "Like I'm sticking close to you now. We're a team, right?" "Right," Lily exclaimed, her spirits lifting slightly. "We're like superheroes." "Exactly. Superheroes never give up. So let's keep our eyes peeled for that big tree you mentioned." As they continued to walk, Michael shared more of his childhood adventures, weaving tales of his escapades and the friends he had lost along the way. He spoke of climbing trees and building forts, of summer days spent by the lake. Each story seemed to brighten Lily's mood, her laughter ringing out like a melody amidst the whispering trees. "What about your mom?" Lily asked suddenly, her innocence cutting through his nostalgia. "Does she worry about you?" Michael hesitated, the weight of her questions settling heavily on his chest. "Sometimes," he admitted, his voice quieter now, "but I think she's proud of me too. I've worked really hard to make something of myself." "Like being a superhero?" Lily asked hopefully. "Something like that," he replied, a bittersweet smile crossing his lips. "But even superheroes have their struggles. It's not always easy being a grown-up." Lily frowned, her little face scrunching up in thought. "I don't want to be a grown-up," she declared, her tone resolute. "It's too hard." "You're right," Michael said, a faint chuckle escaping him. "Being a kid is a lot more fun, but growing up has its moments too." A sudden rustling in the bushes nearby made them both freeze. Michael's heart raced as he scanned the area, instinctively pulling Lily behind him. "Stay close," he whispered, his voice low and steady. They stood in tense silence, waiting to see what would emerge. A moment later, a small rabbit bounded into view, its nose twitching as it sniffed the air. Michael let out a sigh of relief, and Lily giggled softly at the sight of the fluffy creature. "See, even the rabbits are sticking close," he said, smiling down at her. As they moved forward, the path opened up, revealing a clearing that held remnants of a campsite. Michael's heart sank as he surveyed the area. There were scattered camping gear and an abandoned fire pit, but it appeared no one had been there for a while. "This looks like it could be it," Michael murmured, scanning the ground for any signs of life. "Maybe someone saw your mom." "Or maybe she was here," Lily chimed, her eyes sparkling with hope. Michael nodded, trying to stoke that hope. "Let's look around." He began to search the area, carefully inspecting the tents and backpacks strewn about. If anyone was here, they might have left something behind that can help us. As he rummaged through an open tent, Lily wandered off a few steps, her small figure darting between the trees. "Lily, stay close," Michael called out, a hint of urgency creeping into his voice. "I'm just looking," she shouted back, her voice echoing through the clearing as she explored the edges of their temporary sanctuary. Michael sighed, torn between the need to keep her safe and the desire to let her discover the world around her, even if it was just a small corner of the forest. He turned his attention back to the scattered belongings and noticed a small, weathered backpack. As he opened it, a few items spilled out: a half-eaten granola bar, a roll of duct tape, and a photo that fluttered to the ground. Bending down to pick it up, Michael froze as he recognized the woman in the picture. It was a familiar face, one that sent a rush of memories flooding back. His heart pounded in his chest as he absorbed the details: the long hair, the bright smile, and the same blue jacket with flowers that Lily had described. "Lily!" he called urgently, his voice trembling with a mix of shock and excitement. "You need to see this!" She came running back, her eyes wide with curiosity. "What is it?" Michael held the photo out to her, his own hands shaking slightly. "Look at this woman. Does she remind you of anyone?" Lily squinted at the picture, tilting her head. "That's my mommy," she exclaimed, her voice ringing with certainty. Michael's mind raced, the implications of the discovery crashing over him like a tidal wave. "Your mom? Are you sure?" "Yes, that's her!" Lily jumped up and down, her face beaming with joy. Michael felt a mixture of relief and confusion, his heart racing at the realization that they were closer than ever to finding Lily's mother. But alongside that joy was a nagging fear. How had this photo ended up here? Where had Lily's mother gone? "Okay, let's keep looking," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "If she was here, she might have left a clue about where she went next." As they began to search again, Michael couldn't shake the feeling that this moment was just the beginning of something far more complicated than either of them could have anticipated. As the shadows lengthened in the forest, Michael Thompson felt a chill run down his spine. The photo he had found at the abandoned campsite weighed heavily in his hands. It depicted a woman with familiar features, a haunting smile that triggered memories he thought he had buried long ago. Sarah, his childhood friend who disappeared without a trace, leaving a gaping hole in his past. How could it be that she was connected to Lily, the scared girl who had reached for his hand just hours earlier? "Is this your mom?" Lily's innocent voice broke through his thoughts, pulling him back to the present. She tilted her head, her large, expressive eyes searching his face for reassurance. Michael felt a pang of guilt. How could he tell her the truth without shattering her fragile spirit? I think it might be someone I knew a long time ago," he said carefully, his mind racing. "Her name is Sarah, and she was a good friend of mine." Lily's brow furrowed as she processed this information. Was she lost too? Michael hesitated, the weight of his memories pressing down on him. "Yes, she was, a long time ago." "Do you think she's looking for me?" Lily asked, her voice trembling slightly. "I hope so," he replied, forcing a reassuring smile onto his face. But inside, a storm of anxiety brewed. The forest was growing darker, and the thought of being lost in the woods with a child pulled at his heartstrings. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. As they continued deeper into the woods, the trees loomed larger, their twisted branches reaching out like gnarled fingers. The world around them was alive with the sounds of rustling leaves and distant animal calls. Yet Michael felt a suffocating isolation. The weight of his past failures loomed over him like a dark cloud, threatening to suffocate any glimmer of hope. "Michael?" Lily's small voice broke the silence again. "Are you scared?" He glanced down at her, noting the worry etched on her delicate features. "No, I'm not scared," he lied, forcing himself to appear calm. "I just want to make sure we find your mom." "But what if we don't?" The fear in her voice was palpable, and Michael felt his heart ache for her. "Then we'll keep looking," he reassured her, kneeling down to her level. "You're brave, Lily. I know we can do this together." As they pressed on, the forest enveloped them in its darkness. Michael's anxiety grew with each passing moment. He glanced at Lily, who was starting to show signs of distress. Her small hands fidgeted with the hem of her shirt, and her lips trembled as she tried to suppress her emotions. "Lily," he said softly, "let's take a break, okay?" She nodded, and they found a fallen log to sit on. The weight of the day's events seemed to crush down on them, and Michael felt his resolve wavering. "Tell me about your mom," he prompted gently. "What does she look like?" Lily blinked back tears. "She has long hair, like mine, but it's yellow," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "And she always smells like flowers." Michael's heart warmed at the picture she painted. He could almost see the woman in his mind, a nurturing presence who filled her daughter's life with love. "What's her name?" "Emma," Lily replied, a hint of pride creeping into her voice. "She's the best mom ever." A bittersweet smile crossed Michael's face as he thought of his own mother, who had always believed in him, despite his failures. "I'm sure she's looking for you, Lily. Moms are very good at finding their kids." The girl nodded, her expression brightening slightly. "Do you think she'll be mad at me for getting lost?" "No," Michael said firmly, though he wasn't entirely sure. "She'll be worried, but she'll be so happy to see you, just like I will be when we find her." But as the night deepened, doubt began to gnaw at him. The forest felt more ominous, the rustling leaves echoing like whispers of despair. He pulled out his phone, but the signal was non-existent, leaving him feeling more isolated than ever. "Michael?" Lily's voice broke through his musings again. Do you think there are monsters in the woods?" He chuckled lightly, trying to ease the tension. "No monsters, just trees and animals. But I promise I'll protect you from anything that comes our way." "Even if they're big and scary?" she asked, her eyes wide with fear. "Even then," he replied, his tone steady. He wanted to be her rock, to shield her from fear. But inside, the uncertainty churned. What if he wasn't enough? The darkness pressed around them, and the sounds of the woods grew louder, more menacing. Suddenly, a rustle in the underbrush made them both jump. Michael's heart raced. "It's probably just a deer," he said, but even he could hear the lack of conviction in his voice. "Do you think we'll find my mom soon?" Lily asked, her voice trembling slightly. "I hope so," he said, though the words felt hollow. "Let's keep moving." They got up, and just as they were about to continue, a distant voice broke through the stillness of the night. "Lily! Lily!" Michael's heart raced, a surge of hope igniting within him. "Did you hear that?" he asked, turning to Lily, who was staring wide-eyed into the darkness. "Is that my mom?" she whispered, her voice filled with a mix of hope and fear. "I think it is," Michael exclaimed, feeling a rush of adrenaline. "Let's go!" They took off toward the sound, Michael's heart pounding in his chest. With each step, the voice grew clearer, more desperate. "Lily, where are you?" "Mom!" Lily shouted, her voice a mix of joy and urgency. As they ran, the familiar contours of the forest began to take shape. The trees seemed to part, revealing a small clearing bathed in moonlight. Michael's heart raced as he spotted a figure in the distance, a woman frantically searching the area. "Mom!" Lily cried, breaking into a sprint. Michael felt a rush of relief wash over him as he followed closely behind, his mind racing with questions. Who was this woman? What had happened to Sarah? As they drew closer, the woman turned, her face illuminated by the moonlight. Michael felt his breath catch in his throat as recognition flooded over him. It was Sarah. "Lily!" Sarah's voice was filled with relief and panic as she rushed toward her daughter. "Mom!" Lily shouted, launching herself into Sarah's arms. Michael stood frozen for a moment, caught in a whirlwind of emotions. Joy, confusion, and a sense of loss collided within him. He had found Lily's mother, but the implications of this moment weighed heavily on him. "Thank God I found you," Sarah exclaimed, holding Lily tightly, her eyes brimming with tears. "I was so scared." Michael took a step closer, still processing the revelation. "Sarah," he said, his voice trembling slightly. Her gaze snapped to him, recognition dawning in her eyes. "Michael? Is that you?" "Yeah, it's me," he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. In that moment, the world around them seemed to fade away. The forest, the darkness, and the weight of their pasts lingered between them, waiting to be unraveled. As the shadows of the forest lengthened, Michael felt a rush of relief wash over him when he spotted Sarah. Her frantic silhouette against the backdrop of towering trees was a beacon of hope. Lily, still holding Michael's hand tightly, tugged at him, her face brightening with recognition. "Mommy!" she called out, her voice breaking through the tension like a ray of sunlight piercing through the clouds. Sarah spun around, her eyes wide with disbelief and joy. "Lily!" she cried, rushing forward, arms outstretched. It was an emotional reunion, filled with tears and laughter that echoed softly through the trees. Michael stepped back, allowing the mother and daughter to embrace, a bittersweet smile playing on his lips. He couldn't shake the whirlwind of emotions swirling inside him, relief, happiness for Lily, and a pang of confusion as memories of his childhood friendship with Sarah flooded back. Watching them, he felt both like an intruder and a guardian angel. This moment was theirs, yet it was also a reminder of the past he had buried deep within him. He recalled the days they spent laughing and dreaming, the carefree runs through fields, and the way Sarah's laughter could light up even the gloomiest days. But those days felt like a lifetime ago, overshadowed by years of ambition and the relentless pursuit of success. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" Sarah asked, pulling back to look at Lily, her hands framing the girl's face as she examined her for any signs of distress. "I was scared, Mommy," Lily admitted, her voice small. "But Mr. Michael helped me. He was really nice." Sarah turned her gaze to Michael, her eyes glistening with gratitude. "Thank you," she breathed, her voice trembling slightly. "It was nothing," Michael replied, his tone humble. "I just happened to find her." "No, it was everything," Sarah insisted, stepping closer, her sincerity palpable. "I don't know what I would have done if I hadn't found her." Michael nodded, his throat tight. He wanted to say more, to explain the connection he felt, but words eluded him. He felt a strange pull towards Sarah, an urge to reach out, but he restrained himself, sensing the weight of the moment. "Let's get out of this forest," Sarah suggested, breaking the spell. "I need to get Lily home." "Right," Michael said, falling into step beside her as they began walking back toward the path. The sun was setting, casting golden hues across the sky. "Do you have any idea how long you've been looking for her?" "Since early this morning," Sarah replied, her voice laced with exhaustion. "I thought she was playing with other kids at the campsite. When I realized she was gone, panic set in." Michael could hear the tremor in her voice, the underlying fear that had driven her to search relentlessly. "You must be exhausted," he noted, glancing at her worn face. "I am," she admitted, a small smile creeping onto her lips. "But the moment I heard her voice, it was like I found my way home." They walked in a comfortable silence, Lily between them, her small hand clutching both of theirs. It felt surreal to Michael, this moment of unity with the girl he had just met, and the woman who had once held a special place in his heart. He couldn't help but wonder about the years that had separated them, the lost time that had changed their lives so drastically. "Michael," Sarah began, breaking the silence as they reached the edge of the forest. "What are you doing here?" "I came for a weekend retreat," he replied, glancing at her sideways. "Just needed some time away from the city." "Ah, the city life," she said, her expression thoughtful. "I can only imagine how busy you must be." "It has its moments," he said with a shrug, feeling the familiar weight of his success settle on his shoulders. "But sometimes I wonder if it's all worth it." Sarah caught his eye, her brow furrowing slightly. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I've achieved so much," he began, hesitating as he searched for the right words. "But I often feel empty, like I'm chasing something I can't quite grasp." Her gaze softened, and for a moment, he saw the girl he once knew, the one who understood him without needing to speak. "It's easy to get lost in that world," she said gently, "but it's the connections we make that truly matter." Michael felt a pang of longing at her words. He had lost so many connections, sacrifices made at the altar of ambition. "You're right," he admitted, the truth resonating within him. "I've lost sight of what's important." As they reached the clearing where the cars were parked, Michael noticed the worry etched on Sarah's face. "Are you sure you're okay to drive?" he asked, concerned. "I'll be fine," she assured him, though her voice lacked conviction. "I just need to get Lily home and make sure she's safe." Michael opened the passenger door for Lily, who climbed in with a bright smile, her earlier fears forgotten. "Can we have ice cream when we get home?" she asked hopefully. "Absolutely," Sarah replied, ruffling her hair affectionately. "Ice cream it is." As Michael settled into the driver's seat, he felt an overwhelming urge to ask Sarah about her life since their childhood. "What happened to you after, you know, everything?" he ventured cautiously. Her expression shifted, the lightness fading as shadows crossed her features. "It's a long story," she said quietly, her gaze focused on the road ahead. "A lot has happened since I disappeared." Michael sensed the weight of her words, the hidden struggles she had faced. "You don't have to share if you don't want to," he offered, his voice gentle. "No, I think it's important," Sarah said, her tone resolute. "I've had to fight for everything. After I went missing, I ended up in a place I never expected." "What do you mean?" he pressed, intrigued and concerned all at once. "I lost everything," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I also found a strength I didn't know I had. Raising Lily has been the hardest and most rewarding experience of my life." Michael admired her resilience, feeling a newfound respect for the woman she had become. "You're incredible," he said sincerely. "I can only imagine how hard that must have been." A small smile appeared on her lips, but it was tinged with sadness. "I've had to learn to stand on my own 2 feet, but sometimes it feels like a constant battle." As they drove, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the landscape. The intimate atmosphere in the car felt electric, filled with unspoken words and shared histories. While Lily chattered excitedly about the ice cream, Michael stole glances at Sarah, his heart heavy with the realization of how much he had missed her. When they finally pulled into the driveway of a modest house, the air was thick with anticipation. Michael turned off the engine and faced Sarah. Can I see you again?" he asked, the words tumbling out before he could stop them. Sarah's eyes widened slightly, surprise flickering across her face. Please, he interrupted, his voice earnest. I'd like to help you to understand more of what you've been through. She hesitated, her gaze searching his. I don't want to drag you into my life, Michael. It's complicated. Complicated is what life is, he replied, a hint of vulnerability creeping into his voice. I've been running for so long, but maybe it's time to face the past. Lily suddenly piped up. Can we have a party? A welcome home party for Mommy and me? Michael and Sarah exchanged a glance, the tension easing slightly. That sounds like a great idea, Sarah agreed, her smile returning as she looked at her daughter. Yeah, Lily cheered, bouncing in her seat. And Mr. Michael can come too. Michael chuckled, his heart warmed by the innocence of the moment. How could I say no to that? As they climbed out of the car, Sarah hesitated, her hand resting on the door. Thank you again for today, she said, her voice soft yet filled with sincerity. I really don't know what I would have done without you. Just doing what anyone would do, he replied. But inside, he felt a deeper connection forming, a bond woven by shared experiences and unspoken understanding. Would you like to join us for dinner? Sarah asked suddenly, her cheeks flushing slightly. As a thank you, I mean. Michael's heart raced. He felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. I'd love to, he said, a genuine smile spreading across his face. As they entered the house, the warmth of the moment enveloped them. Michael felt the walls of his carefully constructed life beginning to crack, revealing a longing for connection he had buried for far too long. Little did he know, the secrets that lay within those walls would challenge everything he thought he knew about love, family, and the shadows that lingered in their pasts. The sun dipped low in the sky, casting a warm golden hue that filtered through the windows of Sarah's cozy home. It was a charming cottage, adorned with the remnants of childhood, colorful drawings pinned to the refrigerator, and a small collection of stuffed animals nestled on a shelf. Michael Thompson stood in the living room, feeling a strange sense of nostalgia wash over him. The air was thick with the aroma of roasted chicken and herbs, a stark contrast to the sterile scent of his office. Yet despite the comforting ambiance, an undercurrent of tension lingered. Lily sat quietly on the plush rug, her small fingers tracing the patterns woven into the fabric. Sarah, bustling around the kitchen, occasionally glanced at her daughter, a hint of concern creasing her brow. Michael watched them both, captivated by the bond they shared, yet he couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper lay beneath the surface. Michael, Sarah called, her voice light yet tinged with an unsteady edge. Could you help me set the table? Of course, he replied, moving to assist her. As he gathered the plates and silverware, he caught a glimpse of Lily's thoughtful expression. Her eyes, usually so bright and curious, seemed clouded with a heaviness he couldn't quite place. Hey, Lily, he said, kneeling beside her. What are you thinking about? She looked up, her blue eyes reflecting the fading sunlight. Just about my mom, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Michael felt a pang in his chest. You're with her now, he reminded gently. She's right here. I know, Lily said, her gaze drifting back to the floor. But sometimes I feel like I don't know her at all. The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken truths. Michael exchanged a glance with Sarah, whose expression shifted from concern to understanding. Lily, you know I love you, right? Sarah said softly, kneeling beside her daughter. We've been through a lot together, but we'll always have each other. Lily remained silent, her small shoulders slumping slightly. Michael's heart ached for the girl, who seemed to carry the weight of the world on her tiny frame. He wanted to reach out, to comfort her, but he also felt the gravity of the moment. This was not just about him helping a lost child. This was about a mother and daughter rediscovering their connection. As the three of them settled around the table, the atmosphere shifted. Conversation flowed more easily, punctuated by laughter and the clinking of forks against plates. Sarah regaled them with stories of her childhood, moments that brought a smile to Michael's face and a glint of joy to Lily's eyes. Yet as the evening wore on, Michael sensed a tension bubbling just beneath the surface. Michael, Sarah said, her tone growing more serious, I wanted to tell you something important. He set down his fork, intrigued. What is it? I've been raising Lily on my own for the past few years, she confessed. her gaze steady but vulnerable. "It hasn't always been easy." Michael's brow furrowed. "I can only imagine. But why didn't you ever reach out for help?" Sarah shrugged, a flicker of pain crossing her features. "Pride, I suppose. And fear. It's hard to admit when you're struggling, especially when everyone else seems to have it all together." Michael nodded, recalling his own battles with pride and the facade of success he had built around himself. "I understand. I've had my own share of struggles," he said, his voice softer now. "But you don't have to go through it alone. I'd like to help, if you'd let me." Lily perked up at the mention of help, her eyes widening. "Like how?" "Maybe with some resources or support," Michael suggested, glancing at Sarah. "I know some people who could assist you." Sarah hesitated, her brow knitting together. "Michael, I appreciate the offer, but I don't want charity. I want to be independent." "Independence is important," Michael replied, "but so is accepting help when it's needed. You don't have to shoulder everything by yourself." Lily, sensing the tension, spoke up. "Can we just eat? I'm really hungry." Laughter erupted around the table, easing the weight of the conversation. They dug into their meal, and for a moment, the air was filled with the comforting sounds of family, a clatter of plates, the scraping of chairs, and the warmth of shared stories. Yet Michael couldn't shake the feeling that this evening was more than just a reunion. It was a reckoning. As they finished dinner, Sarah cleared the table, while Michael helped rinse the dishes. "You know," he said, glancing at her, "you remind me a lot of the girl I used to know. Always so determined, so full of life." Sarah paused, a faint smile lighting her face. "And you were always the protector. I remember how you would stand up for me when the boys teased me." "Yeah, well, I wasn't always so brave," he admitted, a hint of self-deprecation in his tone. "I had my own fears too. I just didn't want to show them." "Isn't that how it always goes?" Sarah mused, her hands busy with the dishes. "We put on a brave face while hiding the parts of ourselves that we think might disappoint others." "Exactly," Michael said, his voice thoughtful. "But I've learned that vulnerability can be a strength. It connects us in ways we often overlook." Lily, having finished her meal, rejoined them in the kitchen. "Are you two talking about secrets?" she asked, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Not secrets exactly," Michael replied, crouching down to her level. "Just the things we keep inside. Sometimes sharing them can make us feel better." "Like how I told you I missed my mom?" Lily asked, her voice small yet resolute. "Exactly," Sarah said, her heart swelling with pride for her daughter. "It's okay to feel that way, Lily. We all have things we need to talk about." Michael stood up, feeling a surge of determination. "Then let's make a pact, the three of us. We promise to always talk about our feelings and not keep things bottled up, no matter how hard it may be." Lily's face lit up. "I like that. Can we also promise to have dessert after dinner?" Both adults chuckled, and Sarah ruffled her daughter's hair. "Yes, we can absolutely promise that." As they moved to the living room, Michael felt a strange sense of belonging. It was a feeling he hadn't experienced in years, one that filled the void he had often masked with his wealth and success. He realized that the connections formed in the face of vulnerability were more valuable than any business deal he had ever closed. As they settled down with slices of pie, Michael couldn't help but glance at Sarah, who was now smiling brightly at Lily. There was a warmth and strength in her demeanor that he hadn't fully appreciated before. The memories of their past mingled with the hopes for the future, creating an intricate tapestry of shared experiences and unspoken promises. But as he watched the two of them together, a nagging doubt crept into his mind. He couldn't ignore the complexities of their lives and the challenges that lay ahead. In that moment, Michael understood that while they had found each other again, the journey toward healing and understanding was just beginning. The night felt alive with possibilities, yet shrouded in uncertainty, leaving Michael to wonder what revelations awaited them in the shadows of their intertwined destinies. The air hung thick with tension as Michael Thompson sat at the dinner table, his mind racing with thoughts of how to help Sarah and Lily. He had been mulling over the idea of offering financial assistance ever since they had arrived at Sarah's home. The warmth of the cozy living room enveloped them, but he felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening breeze. Just as he opened his mouth to speak, The delicate silence was broken by Lily's small voice. "I have a secret," she said, her tone suddenly serious. The words hung in the air, like a pebble thrown into a still pond, sending ripples of surprise across the room. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" Sarah asked gently, her eyes wide with concern as she knelt down to Lily's level. Michael leaned in closer, his heart pounding in anticipation. The innocent girl had a way of capturing attention, and now she was drawing them into a different kind of story. "There's a big man in the shadows," Lily continued, her gaze drifting as if she were peering into a distant memory. "He comes into my dreams. He's always watching." The room fell silent. Michael's stomach nodded at the implication of her words. A big man in the shadows? What could that mean? His thoughts raced back to the photograph they had found earlier, the one that linked Sarah to his own childhood. Could there be a connection? "What do you mean by watching?" Sarah pressed, her voice a mix of concern and curiosity. Lily shifted nervously in her chair, drawing her knees up to her chest. "I don't know. He feels scary, like he's looking for me." Her voice trembled, and Michael noticed Sarah's hands clenching the table's edge as she processed her daughter's revelation. In that moment, Michael felt a sense of urgency wash over him. The shadows of the past were closing in, and he needed to understand what Lily was saying, as well as the implications it held for both Sarah and himself. "Lily," he began carefully, "have you ever seen this man when you're awake? Or is it just in your dreams?" Lily shook her head, a look of fear crossing her small features. "Just in my dreams, but sometimes it feels like he's real, like he's right there, watching me." Michael exchanged a glance with Sarah, who looked equally troubled. The dinner they had shared moments ago, filled with laughter and reminiscences, now felt like a distant memory, replaced by an unsettling atmosphere. "I think you're very brave for telling us, Lily," Michael said, trying to soothe the girl. "It's important to share these feelings, especially if they scare you." As Lily's eyes filled with tears, Michael felt a surge of protectiveness wash over him. He realized he couldn't just offer financial help. He needed to be there for them emotionally too. "Sarah," he began, his voice firm yet gentle, "I think we need to figure out what this means for Lily. Maybe it's time we talk to someone who can help." "I agree," Sarah replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I don't want to frighten her more. I just want to keep her safe." "Whatever it takes," Michael assured her, his gaze never leaving Lily. "We'll figure this out together." Just then, a loud knock echoed from the front door, shattering the fragile moment. The sound reverberated through the house, sending a chill down Michael's spine. It was an unexpected interruption, one that felt ominous in the wake of Lily's revelation. "Who could that be?" Sarah asked, her brow furrowing in confusion and fear. "I'll get it," Michael said, rising from the table. He felt an instinctual need to protect them, as if something dark was lurking just outside their door. With each step he took toward the entrance, he felt his heart beat louder, a primal drum echoing in his chest. He reached for the doorknob and hesitated for a moment, taking a deep breath to steady himself. What if the big man in the shadows had come to life? What if Lily's dreams were more than mere figments of her imagination? With a firm grip, Michael swung the door open. The night air rushed in, cold and biting, but his breath caught in his throat when he saw the figure standing on the porch. A tall man cloaked in darkness loomed before him, his face obscured by a wide-brimmed hat. He stood motionless, an imposing presence that seemed to suck the warmth from the air. Michael's instincts screamed at him to retreat, but he held his ground, channeling all the courage he could muster. "Can I help you?" Michael asked, his voice steady despite the rising tide of fear within him. The man lifted his head slightly, revealing piercing eyes that glinted in the dim light. "I'm looking for someone," he said, his voice low and gravelly. "Who are you looking for?" Michael pressed, his protective instincts taking over. He felt a surge of adrenaline as he mentally prepared to shield Sarah and Lily from whatever threat this man posed. The stranger took a step closer, and Michael instinctively positioned himself to block the entrance. "It's not what you think," the man replied, his expression unreadable. "I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm looking for Lily." The air grew thick with tension as the name hung in the silence. Michael glanced back toward the dining room, where he could see Sarah and Lily peering out, their faces pale with uncertainty. "Lily's not going anywhere with you," Mikhail declared, his voice low and resolute. "What do you want with her?" "I don't want to hurt her," the man replied, his tone surprisingly calm. "But there are things about her past that she needs to understand, things that could help her." "Help her?" Michael echoed, his skepticism rising. "You think showing up unannounced at her door is the way to do that?" The man's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, Michael saw something flicker within them, an emotion that felt almost desperate. "You have no idea what's at stake here," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "If you care about her, you'll let me explain." Michael's heart raced as he weighed the man's words. The shadows of the past loomed larger, and he couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter was a culmination of everything that had led them to this moment. "Sarah, stay back," he called over his shoulder, ready to protect them at all costs. "I don't trust him." "Please," the man urged, his voice urgent. "I'm not your enemy. I'm here to help. But time is running out." Just then, Lily stepped forward, her small frame defying the fear that gripped the adults in the room. "Mommy, it's okay. I want to hear what he has to say." Michael felt a wave of dread wash over him. The innocence of her words clashed with the gravity of the situation, and he couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the precipice of something monumental. As he looked into Lily's trusting eyes, he knew he had to make a choice, one that could change the course of their lives forever. The shadows were closing in, and the man in front of him was only the beginning of a journey that would unravel secrets long buried, intertwining their fates in ways they could never have imagined.